Hello and welcome to the Reviter channel, where we look into all things having to do with Autodesk Revit. In this video we're going to talk about centralized models. I'm going to explain what these models are and how to use them. Let's start by explaining what a centralized model, also called a central model, is. A centralized model is a Revit model like any other. The file itself is no different, but the model has features enabled that allow it to be worked on simultaneously by many users. A user can be doing walls, while another works on foundations and another on roofing, all at the same time. Centralized models can be shared over a local network, for example in an office, or via the internet using Dropbox or Autodesk 360. Imagine for a second the possibilities of this. An architect in the States can team up with a structural designer in Costa Rica and an electromechanical designer in Europe, and all three can work simultaneously on the model, making corrections and assessing overall design in real time. One of the great advantages of centralized models is that no additional software is required. In the most complicated scenario, you might need an Autodesk 360 account or maybe Dropbox, but other than that, all the necessary functionality is already built into the standard Revit packages. So, how do centralized models work? Well, in a centralized model, there's a master file called a central model. That one resides in a specific place, usually on a network. Each user makes a local copy of the model on their computer, and this local copy is where they make changes to the model. Every so often, each user synchronizes with the central model and sends their changes to be permanently registered. And with each synchronization, the central model is also read, and the user receives changes that others have made. The result is that gradually, all users will build up to the latest version of the model on their computer. The process is really simple, not at all as complicated as some people make it sound. Centralized models also have a function called worksets, which helps prevent editing conflicts on your model. If a user wants, they can take control of a part of the model and mark it as theirs. If another user tries to change that part of the model, Revit prevents them from doing it. But if they want to, the other user can send their change proposal to the model owner automatically. The owner will be notified about the change request, and they'll be able to approve or deny the change in real time. In a later video, we'll talk about worksets. For now, let's see how to create and work in a centralized model. Let's talk about cases where we want a centralized model, because these models are not necessarily a universal solution for everything. Like most other stuff in Revit, there's more than one way to do it. Centralizing a model helps us when we want multiple users to work simultaneously on a single file, usually all on the same discipline. For example, in an office where we have several operators creating the structural components of a building. It can also work when we need to interact across disciplines on a design. For example, if we're working at the same time on the architectural, structural, and electromechanical designs. These three designs generally interact with one another in Revit. As most of you know, to place a lamp, outlet, whatever, you need to set it on an architectural/structural surface. In these cases, it's really useful to work centralized. Just remember that the more disciplines you put in, the bigger your central model is going to become, and that's something you need to take into account. On large projects, if you integrate everything into a single model, you can easily end up with a monster RVT file, which will be difficult to transmit and impossible to visualize unless everyone has the mother of all workstations. And of course, not everyone on a project has a Godzilla-sized workstation available. You really have to look into the subject before starting to centralize anything. You might decide that on a project architectural, electromechanical, and structural will be integrated, but other stuff like landscaping just gets linked. Remember that linking stuff is a valid option. The first thing we do is open an ordinary Revit project in the usual way. We can use templates, start from scratch, whatever. In our file, we create our grids, levels, and if necessary, align coordinate origins, same as we would in any other model. Now the critical step. We're going to save the model in the final location where it will reside. Choose your location carefully. Once the file is created there, we're not going to move it. It's a pain to move a centralized model to another location, so take your time and choose where to keep it. For example, here I'm using a network drive to house my project. I'm going to put the word central on the end of my project file name just so everyone knows that the file is the central model. That way they won't accidentally move, delete, or alter it. Okay, so far just another day at the office. We haven't done anything unusual. Now for the magic part. We're going to activate sharing. We do this in the Collaborate menu with this button that says Collaborate. Revit is going to ask us how we want to collaborate, if on network or Autodesk 360. In my case, I'm using a local network, so I select the first option. In another video, we'll see how we can use Autodesk 360, but trust me, if your team is in one building, it's way better and faster to use a local network than a cloud-based solution like Autodesk 360. Once we do that, Revit enables work sharing and creates the first work sets. In my case, set creation was automatic and we got no prompts. Sometimes Revit will pop up a window and ask you to name these first work sets. If that happens, just accept the default values. It'll be fine. And if all goes well, this work sets button will light up. And if I press the button, there's the work sets Revit created. And from this point on, we've got a central model. Let's save again, and I'm going to go the long route on this one to show you something. Look over here in Save Options. We've got a checkbox that says Convert to Central Model. That confirms, once more, that our centralization was successful. Okay, now we save in order to enable the central model. As a last step, we need to press this button that says Relinquish All My. This releases all the model elements so other users can work on them. If we forget this step, others might receive errors regarding their permissions to modify the model. Note the change in the model work sets. Now there's no owners assigned to the work sets, which is exactly what we want for starting off our central model. One last time we save and then close our model. And with that, we're good to go. The final step has to do with each individual user. They need to have a local copy of the model on their computer to work on. There's two ways to go about this. The easiest is to copy the central model onto each user's computer. That's simple. When the file is opened later on and Revit sees that it's a centralized model, but that it's not in the original location, it's going to get turned into a local copy. So we copy the file and change the name to take out the central. I like to replace that and put local in there so that we know that it's a local copy. But if you forget or don't want to, Revit's going to change the name for you automatically. Now we open the local copy and we're going to get this warning about the model being centralized. Just ignore it. And now we save the project to make it a local copy. In this step, you can see the importance of choosing your central model location carefully, as I mentioned before. As we saw, once we've got a central model, if we move it, Revit tries to turn it into a local copy. So there's no way around that. That doesn't involve jumping through some hoops. So once again, be careful when you choose your central model location. It's really not that easy to move your central model if you chose wrong. The other way to create a local copy is using the File dialog. When I select the central model file, these two boxes below light up. We're going to leave Detach unmarked and Local Copy checked. With this, Revit will create a local copy of our model. Then we just save the copy where we want it. And now we've got a local copy to work on. From now on, the local copy becomes the way to work on the model. We no longer open the central model for anything. Each user works on their local copy and synchronizes every so often with the central model. If you lose a local model copy, no harm done. Just follow the steps above and create a new copy. And that's the way to work on a central model. Each user opens their local copy and does their stuff. If a user needs to lock a work set so it can't be altered, they can do it here in Collaborate. On this list, select the work set to block and set it to editable. Don't worry about the editable or not editable wording. Just trust me on this one. I simply select the work set, and if the work set is available, Revit assigns me as the owner. Soon as I synchronize that change, the work set is blocked and nobody can alter it. Now, I don't recommend you lock work sets as a general practice. It's not necessary unless you have something you absolutely don't want other users to alter. If you start locking work sets, you're probably going to end up getting tons of calls or notifications from people that need to alter stuff you've got locked, and each one of those you'll need to resolve. So ease up and just let your users do their thing. Remember to synchronize with the central model every so often. When you sync, add a comment to let others know what changed. One last thing. See this box down here? This is the active work set, and it works just like the active layer in AutoCAD. Everything you create in your model gets put into this work set. In this video, we're really not going into work sets, so don't worry much about that for the moment. But keep it in mind, when you're doing work set based models, in other words, central models, check that this is set correctly, or else your elements might end up in the wrong work set. And that's it. That's how you create and use a centralized Revit model. In another video, we'll take a closer look at work sets and how to use them. But for now, you should be all set to start doing multi-user projects on Revit. By the way, if you think this video is useful and want to see more videos, be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. Share it and get your friends to subscribe too. That way we know there's people interested in getting more Revit videos out there, and we'll keep on making them. We post a video every so often and let everyone know via our Facebook page, so be sure to like that one too if you want to know when there's new stuff on the channel.